Rose with Metalholic Magazine and Mojo Radio, and with me, Brian Gamblin of Titans Eve. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be on the radio.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. Now, you guys are from Vancouver, British Columbia. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't know who you are yet, so if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the band, the background, and maybe introduce us to the other guys.
Well, the band, we've been around for, since 2008, and we got, I'm Brian. I'm the singer, guitarist, main vocalist, lead guitar. I got my brother Kyle. He does guitar, backup vocals, lead guitar as well. And we got Casey Ori on the drums, Jesse Horde on the bass. And, we're just a melodic thrash metal band that's really trying to get ourselves out there and be a powerful presence in the scene. Just because our music is epic, we make it epic. That's kind of what drives us to do what we do. Is we just like big sound and music, and we want to share that with as many people as we can.
Absolutely. And of course, you're, like you said, you're in the band with your brother Kyle, who's also a guitar player. Tell the truth, sibling rivalry here, right? Who's the better player?
I'd say he's got that legato thing down a lot better than me, but I don't know. It's a back and forth thing.
Well, you guys have been hailed as a modern metal outfit every place that I've read about you. But when I first listened to The Divine Equal, your debut album, to me it sounded like a collision between like Slayer, Pantera, and Iron Maiden. Am I totally off the mark?
No, I never really listened to much Slayer growing up, but we've been compared to them. We've been compared to Machine Head and other bands that, kind of not that we listen to as much. But Maiden's great. I like Maiden. I like all those bands. I think what happens is, in the climate growing up, I was into classical music and heavier tunes, sure, but I think you just kind of hear bits and pieces of everything, and it builds in your psyche these tones. And when you write, it's just natural to kind of write stuff that's been around, or you know what I mean. It's kind of that whole tone of that era, because it's such a big impact on metal. So it's kind of hard not to sound like some of these bands.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing new in rock and roll. We all know that. It's just a different interpretation. But from the metal genre, are there certain bands that inspire you more than others?
Judas Priest, huge inspiration on Carl and I. They were a big influence. Let's see. Everyone's always, everyone gets around to listening to Metallica. We like them. They're obviously biggest like impacting thrash band ever. But it's one of those bands that we listen to and we like them. We were fanatical about them, and it's like that with most bands. But Judas Priest, I'd say, is probably the biggest one.
Well, then I got to ask, if you guys were to cover or do a Titans Eve take on a Judas Priest song, what song would you cover?
I'm going to say Heading Out on the Highway. That song's killer. I know that's a tough call. I'd probably do that, Heading Out on the Highway. I think both Kyle and I would probably do that.
That's a good choice for sure. Now, of course, I mentioned before you guys hail from Vancouver. What's the metal scene like up there?
The metal scene is it's really death tech metal's big down here. Thrash isn't so much. We got few thrash bands around here. In general, it's kind of a smaller scene, but it's a very dedicated scene.
Let's talk about the debut album, The Divine Equal. It's a crushing monster. It's a great, great album. It's actually a concept album of sorts, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. What I did is, when I was growing up, did a little bit of college for guitar. And in that time, I kept hearing Paradise Lost, Paradise Lost, Paradise Lost, and from like students and whatnot. And I said that's just a cool sounding name. The Paradise Lost sounds cool, so I gotta look at this book. I gotta see what this is all about. So I did, and I just found it. I was looking through the passages of it, and it's just really cool. And the whole concept of the battle between Satan being the first rebel and you know, his battle with God and all that kind of stuff. That's just really epic. And so I figured, oh, that was neat. And, you know, growing up, I came from a Catholic school. I was always really liked Genesis and that kind of thing, the beginnings of, you know, Garden of Eden and all that. And I kind of just put those two together and built on the story for the divine equal. And the divine equal actually means God. That the divine equal is Satan's view on God.
And Paradise Lost is John Milton's poem, right?
That's right, yes.
Just wanted to make sure I'm on the same page with you there. So, well, with that in mind then, maybe, you know, since we don't know a whole lot about the band yet, I remember when I was a teenager, I know it's a little bit different now because everything's digital downloads, but when I was growing up, we'd always take the album and I'd sit around for hours reading all the lyrics and everything, and I always sort of wondered what that they were thinking and doing at the time that they created the song.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a mystique to that. So I'd love to go through the album, especially since it is sort of a concept, and maybe go through track by track and have you tell us a little bit about each song and what it means to the story.
Certainly, yeah. Okay.
Kicks off with the intro, Morning Star, which really sort of lowers your guard before the sledgehammer impact of judgment.
Well, that's just it. Now, Morning Star, I imagine, like, the view from, like, when Satan came out of heaven is all, like, you know, in the story that's about, like, it looked like a fireball coming out of heaven. So that's what the Morning Star is, essentially. That's the title for him. So it goes in that, like, creepy interlude that's kind of melodic there, and it slams into judgment, and that's where the battle's taking place in heaven between the rogue angels and God's angels, and then from judgment, you got Becoming the Demon. That's where he totally immerses himself in his own character. He finds himself as this anti-God, and then what happens is it goes right from that into the fire. So that's his plummet. Goes into the fire. He falls into the fire, and then into his abyss. And Serpent Rising, he's garnered his forces. Paradise Lost. There's a passage that says sin and death, which were his kids in Paradise Lost. He goes over the bridge of chaos, and I bring sin and death. That's a line from Serpent Rising. So that's because he's going up in the Garden of Eden to kind of stir shit up with mankind. So from that's the Serpent Rising track, and then you got Tides of Doom, which is like he goes up there. The influences there. It's an all-out battle, apocalypse-style battle. You know, mankind's fighting against force evil, all that kind of stuff. And you know, I'm always referencing, you know, people's, you know, connecting people with that too. Everyone has those battles, and everyone can connect with that. So I always dig for that too. And then it goes into Dusk, which is just kind of a moody little interlude there. Which is like the bombs that went off, the place is just in total disarray. It's just a mood that fills that gap. That's what's going on in Dusk. It's kind of like you're looking upon a desolate landscape. And then Nightfall is the resistance, the final bastion of man going out to, you know, kind of redeem themselves and rescue what they have destroyed. And then you got Living Lifeless, and that's part of the same. That's in the same vein with that whole thing. And like Living Lifeless, the people are living lifeless. They're living to die. They've become excess. You know, you're partying. You're trying to ignore the shit in the world, and people do that today. You know, you don't need an apocalypse for that. And then you got Searching for Nothing. And people are still searching, but they're not going to find it. Got to find what's inside. And you know, you got The Divine Equal, which is what the track's about. Or that's what the whole album's about. It's Satan's realization of who he is. Totally. Like, and who God is in his life.
All right, so this whole thing is woven together. And now, generally with metal music, it always starts with a riff, and then you write a lyrical concept around it. But if you were sort of creating a concept here, how did that sort of work writing this? Did you sort of pair your lyrical concepts with riffs you came up with, or did you sort of build them together? Or
well, usually riffs came to me in my head. See, working landscaping, there's a lot of times you'd be, and not like tree planting, like even the actual hard landscaping. Like Kyle and I, we'd be working these god-awful jobs where we'd be up to our, you know, knees in mud and rain, and our wetsuits have given out and we're just completely soaked and just, and then we got to go 3 hour or sometimes 2 hour travel back to our home and then, to the jam space covered in mud. So we kind of base our feelings on that. So like when we were into the fire, that rip and everything there, I am descending so far below. That's really just came to us when we were working out in the mud.
See, those are always the fun stories you never know when you're listening to the songs, That's the good stuff.
That was.
Tell us about the band name.
Well, Titans Eve, Kyle and I both wanted a strong-sounding title. We wanted, like, something that you could be, I hear so many names, and sometimes, they sound cool, but I forget them all the time. People hear all these band names, and you just kind of forget them. So what Kyle and I did, we wanted something powerful, and we wanted it to be the beginning of something. So I came up with Titans, and Kyle came up with Eve, and we actually did it right there over a few drinks. We were just sitting there, and I was like, Titans, and Kyle's just like, oh, well, Eve, and that's simple as that. That's how we did it.
Tell us a couple of fun or unusual things about the band.
Unusual. Well, we all live in the same house. Well, at least we all did up until about a month ago. And the house we live in, like, people think, oh, you go on tour together, you play in the jam space together, you're around each other all the time. How can you live together? I actually pondered that question myself, but it's just because we all know each other. Like, we just know each other so good. Like, we know when to back off and not, stir shit, or sometimes we like to stir shit, just see where it goes. Maybe get a guilty beer out of it. You know what I mean? So, but the one thing that's really unusual is we live in this house and it's haunted. It's a haunted house, and I didn't believe in ghosts or none of that stuff at all. And I'm sleeping. I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to book this gig in Arizona, and these guys aren't getting back to me. It's really frustrating me. And there's I sleep on a leather couch. Okay, it's like not glamorous at all. And from the outside window, there's light that shines through on the wall. It's like makes the perfect square. And every night it's the same thing, except I'm frustrated over this call, and I look at the square, just kind of off in my own little world, and it looked like there was a branch that was sticking out of it. I said, what is this? And I said, that's a weird-looking branch. And I figured, wait a second, that's not a branch. And right when I said, it's not a branch, it looked like a hand. And as soon as I thought it was a hand, the fingers started moving, and it did like a little gesture, and then it just disappeared. And I, honest to God, could barely move. I was in such a state of shock at what I just saw. Because these guys have been talking about the house being haunted for a long time, and I thought, oh, come on, give me a break. And then seeing it myself, I mean, it was really, really weird. So that's unusual.
If you could tour with anybody, I guess the answer is probably going to go back to the beginning of our conversation, but just to ask, if you could tour with anybody, who would it be?
Well, Priest, but I don't think that's going to happen because it looks like they're doing their final goodbye here, and that's unfortunate. But maybe do a show with them. So, realistically, in the most unrealistic sense, I would probably say I'm going to have to say Metallica on this one. They're just, I mean, we're thrash metal, and they're kind of the godfathers of it, I guess, and I think that would be epic.
Absolutely. But if you had your ultimate chance, it would be Priest, huh?
Oh, without a doubt. They're the kings, man.
There you go. I can't disagree with that in the least. So, Brian, I want to thank you for taking the time. For the current fans and for those potential fans out there, anything you'd like to say?
Oh, just keep supporting live music, supporting music, because it's an art form, and artists can only live off tomato paste for so long, and then they eventually look for the whole pizza, and it's usually at a real job. So support music out there, and I hope you're digging Titans Eve, and I hope to see you all on tour as well, because coming to kick some ass.